So not only are you buying customers at a profit or buying customers at an allowable acquisition cost, you're actually getting the side benefit, the added benefit of building those audiences for, if we're only thinking about the sales, we're literally building these audiences for free.
You're listening to the Brand Growth Project with Rob J. Green and Ryan McKenzie, and today we're talking about understanding customer lifetime value and how to leverage this data to scale faster.
Very cool, Ryan. Thanks for the intro. And I think this is a really, really important topic. It's something that I think isn't talked about enough when we're talking about scaling direct-to-consumer brands. And it really is something that separates, if you will, separates the brands that are really winning and really scaling, right? From the companies that are getting some traction, generating some profit, but have trouble getting past some of those, say, high 5-figure, 6-figure plus days, right? When you start looking at that, I think one of the big things that separates those brands that are really winning is knowing their numbers and really looking at this customer value and how that plays into everything else they're doing within the business.
Totally. And I think how most people look at like customer lifetime value is they look at it from like a big macro perspective. I know that my average customer generates $477 in sales over the lifetime of them being a customer, which is great. I know I can spend that much, but I don't know when I look at that number how quickly I'm actually going to be able to become profitable, and that's super important. So when we look, one of the things that we've really started to leverage in our businesses is breaking down the revenue or the average revenue per customer based on their initial product purchase over different time frames. So we check the average order value. We look at 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, and even a year plus. And the idea behind that is that we can see exactly how long it takes us to generate back our initial customer acquisition cost.
Very cool. Yeah, no, it's very interesting when we start looking at these numbers, because I think, when brands are starting out, especially when we're talking about paid acquisition, and really that's what, that's where knowing your numbers is the most important, right? Obviously, knowing your numbers is important as a business no matter what, but if you were focused entirely on say organic means, and you're not putting $1 in looking to make more than $1 back in profit, it's a little less important. So we're going to talk primarily about this from the standpoint of your running paid media to buy your customer and essentially, make a profit on that customer. And when we're looking at when brands are first starting out, normally it's looking at it and going, I'm going to run an ad, I'm going to spend $1, and I'm looking to get over $1 back in profit on that first purchase, right? So that's really looking at what is our average order value, right? And what is our margin? So what is our average gross profit per sale? And then our goal is to spend under that on ads to get that customer. But when you start to know your numbers, so like you were talking about, Ryan, when a brand starts to know not only how much is that customer worth from a gross profit standpoint on that first order, but what are they worth to the business after 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 365 days plus, or obviously, years if you have that kind of data. It allows you to create an allowable acquisition cost. So instead of just looking at it going, my average order is $100, my margin is say 75%. So I have a gross profit of $75. And then let's say I'm willing to spend, if I spend $50, I make $25, right? If I spend $75 to get that sale, I break even. So instead of just looking at it going, how can I break even or better? It allows us to create an allowable acquisition cost. So how much are we willing to, or how much are we allowing ourselves to pay to acquire that customer? So if we say that we're willing to pay $25 to acquire the customer, then now if we spend $75 on ads in our fictional situation, their $100 average order value, $75 gross profit, right? 75% margins. Then if you spend $75, you break even. If you make your allowable acquisition cost $25, then that means you can now lose or spend up to $25 to acquire that customer, which means now you can actually spend $100 to acquire a $100 purchase. And what's really powerful about that is the idea that the brand that wins, especially in this day and age with advertising, especially within the Facebook advertising ecosystem, Facebook, Instagram, and all of that, the brand that wins is the brand that can spend the most to acquire a customer. And when we look at it, if you and your competitor, if all things were equal, you both sold an average order value of $100, you both had 75% margins, that means if you both spend $75, you break even. But if you're willing to spend $100 to get that customer because you know your numbers and you know how much that customer is worth to you over time, then you're going to win. So being able to increase the amount that you're able to spend to acquire a customer is really, really important. And obviously that can be done by optimizing to increase your average order value, but it can also be achieved by knowing your numbers and being able to know what your allowable acquisition cost is in order to be able to acquire the customer. So it can be super, super powerful. And one thing that jumps to mind for me right away when we're talking about this is going, okay, great. We need to know what we're willing to spend to get that customer. But how does somebody look at that? So when you're looking at this, Ryan, how do you track this? And what are you using to look at it? How do you approach that?
So, great points, Rob. But there's a couple different tools that we use. And first of all, we do have a proprietary piece of software that we use to be able to track this, but you don't need that. We have that because it makes it a little bit easier for us. But right off the bat, you can go and use a tool like Google Analytics. You can go and inside Analytics, go to Audiences, and there's a lifetime value tool. I think it's still in beta there, but you can kind of see the revenue over time. Facebook has a similar tool. As long as you have the pixel installed on your site properly, you should be able to see that there. Another tool that we use a lot is Wicked Reports. It's very good. It shows you all that data again. And then Shopify has a few different tools built in, and I'm sure there's probably about 1 million third-party plugins for Shopify that will give you even more robust data. So those are the kind of the core ones. You should be able, if you're using one of the big platforms like Shopify or WordPress or one of those bad boys, you should be able to find fairly easily one of these tools that'll be able to give you access to that fairly easily.
For sure, man. And you mentioned obviously Google Analytics. Probably everyone has that installed, right? And if you're selling through an e-commerce platform of any sort, you probably have some sort of this data in there. But I know a lot of advertisers haven't dove down that rabbit hole of Facebook analytics as much because it is a little bit, it's a little newer of a platform and there hasn't been as much training. It's not as established. But if you haven't played around with that, I definitely go and jump in. If you are, especially if you're using Facebook ads to drive a lot of your business, I'd jump in there and take a look at how the lifetime value functionality works within Facebook analytics, because it's actually really, really strong. And the cool part about Facebook analytics, everything's tied obviously to users and not to clicks. So I think it's actually a really, really cool platform, how that's working. Now, when we're looking at this idea, right, of understanding your customer value, like your lifetime customer value, or really just a long-term, if you will, right, customer value, and you're looking at that time frame of that, say, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and so on and so forth. It's when you're approaching this idea and you're first getting started with this, one of the big things is just figuring out a model that's going to work for how you're going to approach this, right? So if you're starting out and you're a brand, you're starting out buying customers using a platform, let's say like you're running ads on Instagram, Facebook, or Google or whatever, but you're setting out on this paid acquisition journey. Initially, like we talked about, normally companies are looking at what's our average order value, so how much are we making on that first purchase, and being willing to, let's say, initially break even or better is always a great goal out the gate. Now, what happens though is that over time, you're going to want to figure out ways to spend more to acquire that customer, right? To give you more and more, basically stack the deck more and more in your favor compared to your competition. So how do we keep spending more? So one of the big things is just really getting good at tracking these numbers and looking at these numbers. And what's going to happen is over time, you're going to get more and more data on those users at each of those points. So when you're first advertising, you don't have even 30-day data, right? But as you're running your ads consistently, probably focus top of funnel first transaction as what you're optimizing for. Then once you have enough data at the 30-day mark, you can start to look at, can I increase my allowable cost to acquire a customer based on what I'm seeing after 30 days? And then over time, as you get more data on that, say, 60-day or 90-day time frame, then again, once you've got enough data on customers that have made it to that 90-day point, then you look at, again, reassessing and looking for, can I increase how much I'm willing to pay to get a customer? So it's basically a balance of knowing your numbers and also knowing your cash flow and knowing how much are you willing to invest today to get that customer that you know is going to be worth X over time. And the companies that really win are the companies who know their numbers and are willing to take the longest to make their profit. So the long-term focus on being willing to wait. You know, if you go back and look at, I mean, pretty much anyone has probably seen this promotion back in the day, but you look at, say, Columbia House, right? Columbia House Records. It's probably one of the most famous promotions of all time. What was it like? You'd get X number of CDs.
12 CDs for 1 penny.
Yeah. And obviously they don't make any money on that, right? That is even more aggressive than most of the free plus shipping offers you see now. But the reason they could do that is they knew their numbers, right? Because if you give away 12 CDs for that penny, not only do you have the cost to fulfill that, you've also got the cost of every one of those CDs. They're not breaking even until, and then of course the Columbia House record offer, you do that and then you get a monthly CD. And then if you keep it, you pay for it. If you send it back, you don't pay for it, right? And they know that enough people are going to keep those CDs, and their break-even point would actually be quite a few months down the road for them to have, on average, made more than it cost to acquire the customer. But what's crazy is the offer is so good on the front end that they had, I don't have the data in front of me, but it was a ridiculously high percentage of the adult population of the US who had tried that offer.
Oh, I tried it like at least 10 times. Like I built a CD, like when I was 14 years old, I'd be like, Mom, we got to sign up for this again. And my mom would just get tired of hearing me beg her about it. But I must have signed up for Columbia House like at least 10 times.
It was a ridiculously good offer, right? But it had everything to do with knowing the customer value and knowing the time frame. How many months was it going to take to make that money back? And for them, if you think about that journey, they could never have gotten to that aggressive a front-end offer without really knowing their numbers, right? So that's one way of just looking at it and going, no one could compete with that. Right? No one could compete with that. So
I also think they were a distributor too. So their hard costs on the CDs themselves were probably, sub 20 or under $1. So they had a very easy path to recuperate those costs. Like their margins were massive.
The power of direct to consumer.
Yeah.
right? And you think about it and go, that offer, obviously people don't buy a lot of CDs these days, but that offer, if you're thinking of a direct to consumer company that has a product, especially on a subscription basis, right, who has that kind of margin, that offer is a fantastic model, by the way, right? When you think about, they used paid advertising, normally within magazines, etc. at that time, right? But they use paid advertising to generate a sale of a irresistible top front end offer, and then they had a subscription back end, and they knew their numbers. And that's the power, though, of, I mean, that's the power of being direct to consumer and having, like we talked about on our previous episode, having the margins necessary to be able to afford to buy a customer and essentially pay that, pay Facebook or Google to play that intermediary role between you and the customer, pay to acquire that customer, and then obviously make your money on the back end there. But I think that journey of looking for and just figuring out that model that you're going to use is really, really important. And don't feel like you need to know your lifetime customer value today. You're not going to know that, right? When you're first starting out, at least, right? You're not going to know that lifetime value. If you have a ton of data, you've got years already of selling, go back and look at this, right? Go back and start to calculate this. You might have to do a little bit more in your actual shopping cart program, or go back and look in Shopify or whatever platform you use, or Google Analytics. You're probably not going to have the data in, say, Facebook Analytics for that time period, but go back and learn that data for whatever the maximum amount of time is that you've got a good amount of customer data. And you may find that you can afford to spend a lot more to acquire that customer than you thought you could top of funnel.
Totally. And you can also plug this in, like if you do this properly. A lot of people don't enter spaces like the affiliate marketing ecosystems like ClickBank or JVZoo or any of the other number of other direct response like affiliate platforms, because they see the prices that these people are paying out, and they think, oh, that's way too much money for my offer. When what's happened is the crazy experts in direct response that are using affiliate marketing have gone and figured out what is the highest, craziest number that they can pay. Because at the end of the day, even affiliates are really auctions, right? Like if there's two offers that pay, one pays twice as much and they both convert at the same level, they're obviously going to go with the offer that pays twice as much. So if you look at obviously Facebook and Google ads are auctions, but even affiliates, like traffic is always an auction. And when you can get these numbers dialed in and you can pay the most, you open up a lot of doors.
For sure. You really open up that ability to not only, advertising those big advertising ecosystems like Facebook and Google, but you have all of those different affiliate networks. Like you were talking about, things like ClickBank and JVZoo, which of course do a lot in the info product space, and ClickBank's getting more and more into the physical product space as well. But also, some of those other ones like your commission junctions, and then all of your big cost per action, so all your CPA networks, like your big ones like W4, et cetera. And those really open up a lot of opportunities even in the physical product space. And that you really hit on a point there, because that can open up an entire new channel that can be extremely powerful for scaling the brand. And when you know those numbers, if you know that on Facebook, you'd be happy to spend $75 to get that purchase because of what they're worth to you over time, or maybe it's $100. In our fictional example, you sell it for $100, you make $75 gross profit. Maybe you decide that you're okay with spending $25 to acquire the customer, so you're willing to spend $100 to get the customer and only make 75. Then if you know those numbers and you're happy to do that on Facebook, try taking that offer to affiliate networks and have the actual payout be $100 on that sale. And that's $100 payout on an average $100 purchase, right? And that, if you look at the conversion rate and you look at the type of offer, that offer is probably going to do really, really well and actually get a lot of people interested from an affiliate standpoint. I love that you touched on that.
I love that you touched on it too.
And so one other piece, obviously we're talking about that journey, right? We're talking about the journey of how we calculate that, how we approach it, how we look at it. But what about the idea of improving it, optimizing this lifetime or long-term value of a customer? Because we've touched on the importance of average order value and how we want to boost that. But what about increasing customer value and optimizing that process? How do you kind of approach that, Ryan?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So, I mean, I think we've had another episode where we talked about just general how to increase your AOV or your LTV on your customers. And that's great. It's nice you obviously want to maximize your post-purchase conversions and all that stuff. But when you take the entire term, your average customers are with you, and you break it down and you can kind of see it visually, like, we have our 7 days, or 30 days, or 60 days, or 90 days, or 180 days, 180 day plus. If you look at those timeframes and you're noticing that you're getting purchases at the 30-day mark, the 60-day mark, and the 100-day mark, but at that 90-day mark, for whatever reason, you don't have a lot of revenue coming for those customers, that's a pretty good indication for me that that's a great place to plug in another offer. So whether you build this into a post-purchase automation that happens 90 days after the initial purchase, where you either you send them a coupon or you send them some other kind of offer, whether it's something tied to the initial purchase, or it totally depends on your market. But whatever it is, plug in another offer at that 90-day point. If there's a lull between 30 and 60 days, plug in an offer there. If there's an opportunity to put in some content, another additional continuity piece to get some recurring revenue and get better predictability, that's another great way to do it. That's kind of how I analyze over time. Other things that you can do that a lot of people don't look at, especially when they have a lot of different products. A lot of people tend to focus on 1 or 2 or 3 main core products, is to go and build this report for the first, I want to see an LTV report based on my customer's first purchase. Because if they somehow get to my store and they buy widget C, which I don't normally promote or do ads to, and that happens to have an amazing LTV, I'm going to want to go and start creating some assets and doing some direct response marketing, whether it be Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, whatever it is, directly to that product if I can tell that there is a very good back-end revenue source off that item. That's just really easy opportunity for me. And I try to run that report across all of our products, every month or 2, just to see if there's something that might have snuck in randomly that is performing really well without me putting a lot of effort in it. Because if it's already doing well without me optimizing its back-end funnel, that means that there is a lot of money on the table for me to gobble up. And I like to gobble up money.
I hope that pretty much everyone listening likes to gobble up money. I like it. What's interesting on that note is just when you're touching on there, kind of how to look at the optimization of that process. I think a lot of brands spend a lot of time thinking so short term that they're so focused on trying to eke out a tiny bit better ad performance, or a tiny bit higher average order value, or a little bit higher opt-in rate on their lead generation, and all of these pieces where these are great. In the beginning, especially, you really want to optimize top of funnel, right? The changes that you make top of funnel really do trickle down to a very high degree, because there's a lot more people, a lot more impressions, et cetera, at the top of the funnel. But once things are working, there's a lot being left on the table, like you're talking about there, as you go down funnel, but not down funnel towards the purchase, but down funnel after the purchase, and selling more to people over time. And that can be a way that you can massively improve what you're doing, and either make your everything significantly more profitable if you're happy with that, or make it so that we can increase our allowable acquisition cost to get more people into our funnel, more people introduced to the business, get more people's attention top of funnel. Now, what kind of jumps to mind for me with that, actually, since we're talking about that sort of process, is that in addition to the sales that you're generating. So when we're looking at this, obviously we're running ads to put our brand, our information, our product, our solution in front of people. And in that process, we are getting customers, at a break even or better, or we're getting customers at an allowable acquisition cost, whatever that is. Often, that's the only focus that people, or the only piece that brands notice. And there is another piece that I think is really, really important. And that is the idea that during this entire process, you're building audiences, right? You're getting people's attention, and you're building audiences, at every single step in this funnel, right? So as you run ads, let's say within Instagram and Facebook, as you run ads, you get your product in front of people, you get people engaging with your ads. Some of those people click and some of those people purchase, etc. But the people who engage with the ad, the people who watched your video, etc., all of those people, all that attention, that's building audiences that you can continue to market to, you can continue to run ads to, that are not entirely cold. And as those users move through your funnel, so as they get deeper into your funnel, it creates audiences at all of these deeper steps of your funnel, if you will. And so not only are you buying customers at a profit or buying customers at an allowable acquisition cost, you're actually getting the side benefit, the added benefit of building those audiences for, if we're only thinking about the sales, we're literally building these audiences for free. And these audiences perform very, very well when it comes to marketing and selling to over time. And one last kind of, if we're thinking about advertising audience-based tips that comes from there, is we're building audiences through our funnel, but also we're actually building an audience of customers as well. And one thing that I think a lot of brands aren't doing, that they're leaving money on the table, is strategically looking at how to use advertising to advertise to your customers and sell those customers additional products. Because obviously you have them on your email list, right? You probably have their address. You could probably send them, you probably send them a catalog. You could send them direct mail, etc. But there's only so much that you can email a customer, right? You're probably not going to email the customer multiple times every single day about different products, right? That's probably not how you want to approach it. You can probably email more than you actually are. Most companies aren't emailing enough, but you're probably not going to email them multiple times a day. But that same customer, it's not weird if they see a few of your ads a day, especially if it's across different channels. If you're talking about Facebook, Instagram, you're running in feed, you're running in stories, you've got an ad on within the Google ecosystem, etc. You can use those ads to get additional touch points to those customers, and also be able to show them different products, different collections, different categories of products. And then you can actually gauge the interest of customers to each one of these different product collections or product categories, and then you can focus your ads on those. So you actually move people into other products as well as other categories of products within your product line by using ads to supplement just hitting them over and over and over with email. So I think that's something that thinking about that can really increase the number of sales and increase that lifetime value of the customer.
100%, man. Very, very good insights. So yeah, I think that's probably a lot of information for people to digest. I hope that everybody can, and I think most people can, who aren't already doing this, apply these to just about any type of business. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up here, Rob?
No, I think that's perfect, Ryan. I would say the biggest thing is just look at the data you have and figure out and start running some of these numbers, right? And if you're just starting out, just start thinking about first looking at that average order value, and then start at least choosing another time frame, maybe that 30-day mark, and go, I'm going to start looking at the data for that 30-day mark. And then you can, of course, go further from there. But the biggest thing is just look at this data. Don't just go, awesome, lifetime value of a customer. I know about this. Actually go in, look at these platforms, look at what you're seeing from a lifetime value standpoint or long-term value standpoint, pick a time frame that you're comfortable with and see whether or not this is going to allow you to increase that allowable acquisition cost, right? Increase what you're able to spend top of funnel, and then pick somewhere to start optimizing, whether that's running some ads to your customers, whether that's finding a kind of dead spot in your post-purchase funnel and putting an automated campaign in there, whatever that is. Pick a way to look at this, start looking at these numbers, and pick something to move the dial and pick something to launch. And I think then you're going to be great. Once you get into optimizing this, you're going to get hooked on it, and it's going to be something that you do longer term. So thanks very much for chatting with me about this, Ryan. I think this was a really fun one, and something that people talk about and give lip service to, the whole lifetime value of a customer piece, but don't really tangibly work on improving, week after week in their business. So thanks very much, man.
Yeah, it was great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with Rob J. Green, where should they look to find you?
Easiest would be on Instagram or Facebook at Rob J. Green Official, or you can, of course, track me down at just robjgreen.com. How about you, Ryan? Where can they track you down?
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on my business page on Facebook. It is The Rye McKenzie. That's TheRyemckenz, or Z if you're in Canada, IE, or on Twitter at Ryan McKenzie.
Fantastic, man. I look forward to chatting with you next time. And until then, you have a fantastic one. And if you're listening, I look forward to hearing about how this affected you. So don't be a stranger. Reach out, drop us a note. We'd love to hear how this was helpful, or what this allowed you to do, or if you had some successes with boosting your lifetime customer value. Love to hear about it. So you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll talk to you in the next session.